All right. Hello again, Avengers, and welcome to another exciting daily vlog. This is Daily Vlog 2025, number 83, and today I got some opinions, and y'all's is gonna hear them. So, for anyone that doesn't know, uh, I can't leave my house. Because of that, when new movies come out, I don't get to see them until they're available for streaming. And generally, depending on the movie, but most of the time that means I don't get to see them either until they come out on something like Netflix, or the rental price is no longer $20. So, I've been wanting to see Wicked since it came out because I'm a big fan of the stage show. I've seen it either 3 or 4 times. I can't remember how many times I saw it in Chicago because I saw it in Chicago with my high school. We actually did a field trip when we went to go see it in Chicago. And then I saw it in Chicago a second time with my first girlfriend. And I can't remember if I saw it a third time in Chicago. And then, as a birthday present, my girlfriend's mother actually sent us to New York, where we got to see, I think it was 4 shows. One of them was Wicked. We also got to see Spamalot, Phantom of the Opera. I can't remember what the fourth one was. So anyway, Spamalot, Phantom of the Opera, and then we also saw Wicked. They were all amazing. We got to see them on Broadway. They were all amazing. Our hotel was on Broadway. And I love the musical Wicked. And for me, it's a lot of different things. Like the musical itself is really, really well written. The book, if you've read the book is nothing like the musical. Like the musical, there's all this glitz and glamour, and it's this amazing experience. The book is a heart attack. Like, it's so dark. It is so incredibly dark and dirty, and there's just lots of stuff going on in the book. Like, I bet you guys didn't know Fiyero is blue. Yeah. In the book, he's blue because in the original movie, all the Winky guards were blue. So anyway, I'm a huge fan of Wicked. I had my reservations about the movie. First of all, because stage musicals to movie transitions have not been great recently. Dear Evan Hansen sucked. The new West Side Story wasn't that it was this horrible, disgusting movie that should never be. It was just lukewarm, and West Side Story is probably one of the greatest musicals of the 20th century. It is just a phenomenally brilliant musical. I have watched West Side Story multiple times in multiple places. I've seen it in the round. I've seen it more traditionally. I've been in West Side Story. I played Bernardo when I was in high school. I love that show. And so many other people do. And the Steven Spielberg version of it wasn't bad. It just wasn't amazing. And that's what West Side Story is. And so coming into Wicked, I had my reservations. I had a lot of friends that went to see it. They said it was amazing. It was wonderful. Everybody did everything perfectly. And I don't 100% agree with that. Is it a bad movie? No way. Do I regret seeing it? Absolutely not. Do I think I'm going to see it again? Absolutely. It was a phenomenally fun time. But there are some issues that I have from a musicals perspective and from an acting perspective. And this is like real nitpicky stuff that if you haven't had training in either of those two fields, you probably didn't even notice these things, because the rest of the movie, Wicked the movie, is is a spectacle. It really, really is. I wish I could have seen it in theaters, because I bet, especially that damn opening scene, I bet watching that movie in theaters was mind blowing. Like, everything about the movie is just phenomenally spectacular looking. The whole movie is just this giant spectacular. The colors are massively bright. There are these huge things going on. Like, everything about it is a spectacle. And if you've seen the stage show is a spectacle. One of the best things about this stage show, in my personal opinion, for people that have never seen it before, and I'm going to spoil this for you, I'm real sorry, but I have to explain it in order to explain why it's so amazing. Part of the set for the stage musical is you have this giant kind of mechanical awning that is built around the opening of the stage. At the very top, there is a clock with a mechanical dragon kind of wrapped around it. They call that the dragon clock. And they make mention of that in the movie. They say, by this thing happened, by the dragon clock, blah blah. So the dragon clock is this big thing, and it's a fully working, really cool clock with his dragon wrapped around it. And anytime Elphaba uses her magic, the entire mechanical dragon animates. There are lights and smoke, and it starts flapping its wings and moving its massive skull. It is so incredibly cool. And it's completely unexpected. Like, you come into the theater, and you can see it there. And the cool thing about the stage version, every single time I've gone there, what happens is you come into the theater, and if you've ever been to it at the theater before, you will come in, and the curtain will be down. And normally, the vast majority of theaters you will walk into, what you will see is a big red curtain. And that's it. You see this big old red curtain, and you come in. Sometimes you can see the pit orchestra, depending on where they put them. For anyone that doesn't know, the pit orchestra is the people that play the music. The reason they're called the pit orchestra is in most theaters, you'll have like the stage here, and if the audience is way back here, the pit orchestra is right here. They're right in front of the stage, but they're dropped down, and so they're in a literal pit. And generally, from the audience, the only person that you can see is you will be able to see the very top of the conductor, because the conductor has to be able to see the actors and be able to conduct the orchestra. And they actually work as kind of a relay between the actors and the orchestra, because the orchestra has to follow the actors. And so the conductor has to kind of watch the actors and keep the orchestra in line. It's a really, really cool thing. Once in my life, only once, I got to play in the pit of a musical that I was on stage for as well. And it was super, super fun. I'd love to do pit work again. The only thing that sucks about being in a pit orchestra is keys that are really nice to sing in are not keys that are really nice to play in. And they'll have all these weird accidentals, and they'll be in like 7 sharps or like 6 flats. It's not fun. But anyway, so when you come into the theater, normally it's just big red curtain. But in Wicked, they have a map in front of it, and they're projecting. It's a map of Oz, and in the center is the Emerald City, and they actually have a projector set up so that the Emerald City is animated on this paper map, and it's so cool. So anyway, getting back to the movie. The movie is a spectacle, and they do it so incredibly well. And there's so many little details that I find absolutely astounding. Like, something that kind of blew my mind. When the train comes to bring Elphaba to the Emerald City, the train itself is entirely clockwork. And while that may just say, oh, that's cool, it's more than that. because, slight spoiler alert for Wicked if you haven't seen it or you're not familiar with Wizard of Oz, which I think is nearly 100 years old at this point, the movie. The books are over 100 years old. Spoiler alert, the wizard has no magic. However, he's a very talented inventor. And he's very, very good at making machines and other things like that. And so the fact that the train is entirely made of clockwork is this nifty little nod to the idea of the wizard is a tinkerer. The wizard is effectively a toy maker that has let his toys kind of go crazy. And so I love, there are so many little details like that that are really, really brilliantly done. And so overall, like, again, the movie itself is this amazing spectacle that is immensely fun to watch. And the soundtrack in and of itself, there were some weird choices that were made as far as the orchestration and the arrangement of this particular soundtrack. They didn't just take the orchestration from the stage musical and then use it in there, which that's how it works. Things that'll work on stage won't necessarily work on film and vice versa. So there were changes to songs and there were changes in instrumentation. And I think the thing that I noticed the most, really, really popular songs like Popular or Defying Gravity, the motifs from those songs would show up all over. However, there were parts from the stage musical, specifically stuff from like the overture and that, where when there's this phrase that happens during the overture, and it shows up throughout the stage musical all the time. This I can't sing it very well, but it's this really, really fast run that flutes and I think a xylophone do simultaneously, and it's really, really good. And there's a few other kind of themes that show up in the musical a lot, but they weren't on the quote unquote soundtrack because there were incidentals and the things like that. Incidentals, if you're not familiar, incidentals are basically the sound, the songs that play while the scenes are changing and stuff like that. Sometimes called transitions as well. But they're little things, and the incidentals in this, they kind of threw away all of the incidentals from the stage show, which I think were really, really good because the incidentals would kind of prep you for the next scene that was happening. And in here, all the incidentals, first of all, the scene transitions can be significantly faster because they don't have to wait for an entire stage to be cleared. So they don't have as much time for the incidentals. And then second of all, the incidentals in the movie are mostly the most popular songs that most people are familiar with, because not only was Wicked this massive musical that people really got into, the soundtrack was massively, massively popular. I know most of the kids in my choir owned the soundtrack and listened to it constantly, and we would break out into song during choir and during study hall, really anytime we were together. Yep, I was one of those kids. But the incidentals and stuff like that were not the things that people were listening to. They were listening to Popular. They were listening to Defying Gravity, For Good. The big pieces that, got huge amounts of airtime and made Idina Menzel and Kristen Chenoweth just sound phenomenal, which they normally sound phenomenal, but I don't think a lot of people quite realize just how much these parts were written specifically for Idina Menzel and Kristen Chenoweth. Like 100%. The Defying Gravity, that last part, the where she just does that crazy belt that back then nobody could do. Idina Menzel was the only person in existence that could do that, and now everybody can do it. But like that part was written for Idina Menzel. And then all of the crazy high lyric soprano stuff that Glinda does was just Kristen Chenoweth, because she's got this amazing control and this unbelievable ability to hit these notes that, like, if you're not familiar with kind of the deviations in voice types, soprano, like most people are familiar with the kind of four basic voice types. You have soprano, alto, tenor, bass. And if you want to get a little bit pedantic, you can put baritone in between tenor and bass. And that's basically going from the high notes all the way to the low notes. Sopranos sing the highest parts. Altos tend to sing in the middle. Tenors sing the highest parts of the male voices. Baritones are in the middle. And basses sing the bass. However, especially once you get into musical theater and opera, there are like really fine subdivisions of each of those. And Kristen Chenoweth is what's referred to as a lyric soprano. And a lyric soprano are these freaks of nature that can hit these crazy, super high notes, and not just hit them so that you can hear them. They have this immense control to make these massive, super high notes sound beautiful and effortless. And that's what a lyric soprano is. Fun fact, Ariana Grande, technically, if you define it entirely by her range, which isn't technically how you do it, but that's how it's an easier way, she is in the neighborhood of what's called a light lyric soprano, which is just below a lyric soprano. She doesn't quite have the upper range of a lyric soprano. However, when you look at how she sings, she's much closer to what's called a belter, which is generally what's called a mezzo-soprano. And a mezzo-soprano is still soprano, but they're a little bit lower, and they use a lot more of their chest voice. So anyway, getting back to the movie, it is 100% a spectacle. But some of the choices that were made, and I think a few of these were choices that were made for the actors because their uniform. And in general, when you have kind of a uniform choice amongst a bunch of really, really different actors, that means that the director has made that choice for them. It's going, no, this is what we're going to do. I wasn't particularly fond of. Again, the music is amazing. The notes themselves are perfect. With a few very rare exceptions, like Michelle Yeoh, I don't believe is a trained vocalist. And it kind of shows in the one part where they have Madame Morrible actually sing. She didn't do great. She didn't do bad, but her voice was not quite precise, especially when you're comparing, like, she probably would have been fine and no one would have no. Most people didn't notice. I wouldn't have noticed. Let's put it that way. I wouldn't have noticed the fact that vocally she was weaker than the rest of the cast. If it wasn't for the fact that you had freaking Ariana Grande and I can't remember her name. I'm just gonna look it up here because I'm gonna say it over and over and over again. Okay, there we go. Cynthia Erivo. There we go. Cynthia Erivo. She plays Elphaba. I mean, nonsense. Powerful pipes. And the part of Elphaba, again, was written for Idina Menzel because Idina Menzel was a freak of nature. And I say this with as much respect and dignity as I can. She could do things with her voice that she shouldn't have been able to do. She could belt notes that shouldn't have been possible. If anyone's not familiar with the term belting, belting is a singing technique that shows up mostly in theater. And the reason it shows up in theater is because when you are in front of an audience, especially if you're doing Broadway work, your theaters are going to have hundreds of people, sometimes thousands of people. I think that's the right. My brain's just gone. In the room. And you also have all of these curtains all around you, and you have curtains all around. And what all those things do is they absorb sound. Human bodies absorb sound. And so the reason belting is so popular on stage is because belting gets the sound out really, really far and really, really clear. And what belting basically is it's a form of chest singing. If you're not familiar with that term, in singing in general, you'll hear the terms chest voice and head voice, and then there's technically a difference between head voice and falsetto. What they are is they're basically referring to where the sound resonates the most. Like, for the most part, I sing almost exclusively in my chest voice because I am a bass. I don't really need to use my head voice a whole lot because I'm singing way down here. But your chest voice is things like la da 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 da. That's chest voice. If we want to go into head voice, we'll be la da 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 da. And I'm resonating more here. And then we also have this thing called falsetto, which falsetto literally changes how your vocal cords are processing the sound. And that's that kind of, for lack of a better term, that's that kind of girly sound, like castrati singers and stuff like that. La, da, da. I don't have really good control over my falsetto. It comes and goes. There's some days that I have really good, like, let's see, if I do, let's open up a restaurant in Santa Fe. Sunny Santa Fe would be nice. Let's open up a restaurant in Santa Fe and leave this to the roaches and mice. Oh, 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 oh. I got a little bit of falsetto in there. I think the party do it most. We'll open up in Santa Fe. That's falsetto. My falsetto isn't great, and I have to work really, really hard to get it to the point that it sounds good. So anyway, that's parts. And there's arguments about whether women actually ever use falsetto or if it's entirely their head voice. However, belting is using your chest voice, and it's using this kind of hyper resonance. It's not really yelling, but it has kind of a similar timbre to yelling. It's this really loud, projected, directed sound. And it sounds amazing. If you've ever heard Wicked and that last note, that's belting. And because it has to be in your chest voice, there's normally kind of an upper limit for what you can belt. Because as soon as you have to pop into your head voice or you have to start using your falsetto, you can't belt anymore because the resonance changes, and belting requires this amazing resonance from your chest and really strong diaphragm support and all that stuff. And once you switch up into your head voice, you're using all the resonance chambers in your sinuses and things like that. You're basically, the way I kind of think about it when I'm singing in my head voice, is I'm trying to make the sound come out of the bridge of my nose. Like I'm directing all of the sound to come right here, as opposed to when I'm singing in my chest voice, it's all right here. So Idina Menzel was able to belt these notes that every other singer on Broadway would have to do in their head voice. And it was nonsense. She was an absolute freak of nature. And as soon as she proved that she could do it, everyone started realizing, well, maybe I should start doing it. And now there's a lot of people that can hit that note. Cynthia Erivo doesn't just belt that note. Let me tell you, she belts above that note. She does nonsense stuff in this movie. So anyway, getting back to the movie itself. From a musical standpoint, the singing was nigh perfect. And the only times I really heard something that was not like absolute perfect, the correct note, was, other than for Michelle Yeoh, was when actors were intentionally doing something because of the acting choice that we're making, where the variation in pitch or something like that was intentional. which is something I'm a huge fan of. One of the reasons I did not enjoy Phantom of the Opera as much as I would have liked to on Broadway, because the woman that was playing Christine was a former lyric soprano in opera, which that's where we get the term lyric soprano from. She's a former opera singer. She probably went back. She just wasn't an opera singer that day. She was doing musical theater. And her diction was so precise, and her notes were always so perfect that it didn't sound right. Like she'd do, "The Phantom of the Opera is here inside my mind." Which is great. I understood absolutely everything that she was saying, but it just didn't feel natural. So if you focus too much on getting the perfect sound, you lose something in the acting aspect of it. People don't always sound perfect when they're speaking, especially when they get emotional, which the entire purpose of a musical singing, basic rule of thumb for musicals, the reason they break into song is there's this kind of level of emotion. If you're somewhat emotional about something, you will speak it. When you become too emotional to speak, you start to sing. When you become too emotional to sing, you start to dance. And that's how musical theater works. If you see someone singing, it means the emotions they're trying to convey are too powerful for them to simply just speak it. You see them break out into dance, the emotions that they're trying to convey are too powerful to simply sing it. They have to dance. It sounds weird, but it is like that's just how musicals work. And it's extremely effective from an audience perspective because people can empathize better with music than they can with spoken word. And lyrics can sometimes get in the way of them empathizing because they're focusing on what the words are saying. And so that's why dance is like the ultimate emotion thing, because you have the music there and you have pure emotion coming out of them physically, but you're not getting bogged down with words. So anyway, getting back to the movie. The singing was divine. The absolute accuracy of everything was really impressive. There was a lot of really amazing, very technically difficult singing that went on. However, it took away a little bit from the emotional impact, because there's a lot of songs in here that are gut punches. Like the ones that most people are familiar with, things like Popular. Popular is a silly song. This is what it is. It's just a silly song, and it's really catchy. But there's not a lot of emotional depth to it. It's basically just two people that don't like each other singing about it. When you look at something like I'm Not That Girl, that is this incredibly gut-wrenching song. If you're not familiar with the piece, I'll even look up the lyrics because the lyrics are so amazing. Okay. So, the song itself, like I'm just going to sing it for you. Hands touch, eyes meet, sudden silence, sudden heat. Hearts leap in a giddy whirl. He could be that boy, but I'm not that girl. Don't dream too far. Don't lose sight of who you are. Don't remember that rush of joy. He could be that boy. I'm not that girl. So those are the first two verses of it. And those two verses are a perfect explanation of the entire song. The first one The song happens when Elphaba is starting to fall for Fiyero, and Fiero's starting to fall for Elphaba. And so the first verse, the first stanza, is talking about this kind of overwhelming experience of when you have that instant connection with someone where you both kind of realize that there's something there, and you just like, your hands touch, your eyes meet, the world just kind of shuts off for a second. It's not just you stop talking, the entire world stops existing for this brief moment where all that exists is you and this other person. And then emotions start flaring. Your body gets hot because blood is rushing everywhere in your body, and you're kind of getting ready for something to happen because all of these emotions are. That's what that's talking about. And the very next stanza is, don't dream too far, don't lose sight of who you are. As soon as she realizes that there's something there, she instantly has to go, stop it. Don't do this. Don't you dare. That's not for you. Don't forget who you are. Elphaba has spent her entire life being this outcast. Her own father blames her for her mother's death, blames her for what happened to her sister. Everybody in the town absolutely despises her. She gets to shiz. They hate her there. They have an entire song talking about how everybody hates her. So, having been that person, you develop this defense mechanism of when good things start happening, or you start believing that maybe this person actually cares about me, you instantly shut that down. You just, because hope is so dangerous when you're in a position like that, because you just kind of, the way that you live through an experience like that is you convince yourself this is just how the world works. And it makes, as crazy as it sounds, it makes it easier to deal with. You just kind of accept other people get to be loved. Other people get to feel happy. I don't, because it's just not how the world works. This is how the world works. And when you meet someone that challenges that, it's terrifying. Because if that's not how the world works, then you have to deal with the fact that people have treated you atrociously for no reason. They have done horrible, horrible things to you and made you feel like you're not worthy of love. And in a world where, hey, that's just, I'm actually not worthy of love. So they weren't doing anything wrong. That's just how it is. In that world, that's okay. But as soon as that world changes, and you're like, wait a minute, I might be worthy of love. Oh my God, all of these people that were just living in a world are now monsters to me because they've treated me like I am horrible and disgusting and don't deserve to be loved. And your brain won't deal with that. So I massively identified with this song the first time I listened to it. I've listened to this song a million times. It is such a brilliantly written song. And so when you're singing this song, you can make it sound very, very pretty. And Cynthia, my brain will not let me pronounce her last name. I don't know why. It's Arrivo, something like that. It's a super simple name. Brain just won't let me pronounce it. It's a wonderful name. This is not a cut at her name or anything. When she sings that song, it's very, very pretty, and the notes are perfect, but there's no emotion to it. One of my biggest problems I have with her performance in this is not that it's not good. It's brilliant, especially this, like, she has such a phenomenal voice. She really, really does. But her expression through the entire movie, she has this, like, neutral, almost like resting bitch face for the entire movie. There are, like, 3 or 4 places where it changes, and they're all Like it's very, very obvious that the director told her, okay, now show emotion. Because it's such a strange change from how she's been in the entire thing. Like, The Wizard and I is another one where a lot of the stage actresses will sacrifice some of the vocal quality to put a little bit more emotion in it. So, the lyrics for The Wizard and I. When I meet the wizard, once I prove my worth. Then I meet the wizard, what I've waited for since birth. By my looks he won't be blinded. Or wait, no. And with all his wizard wisdom, by my looks he won't be blinded. Do you think the wizard is dumb? Or like Munchkin so small-minded? No, he'll say to me, I see who you truly are, a girl on whom I can rely. And that's how we'll begin, the wizard and I. So, very pretty song, very catchy song. However, when you look at the lyrics and stuff like this, again, Elphaba has lived an abused life. She's an abuse survivor. And so what you see in the stage version is one of the ways that she's learned to deal with that is she's very kind of sarcastic and self-deprecating. Which again is an extremely common trait of abuse victims. If I make fun of me first, they can't. If I can get them laughing at me, then they can't attack me. It's extremely common. In the stage version, when you first meet the adult-ish version of Elphaba, when they first get to Shiz, everyone's looking at her, and she just knocks off a bunch of one-liners. She's like, no, I'm not sick. No, I didn't eat grass when I was a child. Yes, I've always been green. And when you watch on the stage version, especially like Idina Menzel, or I got to see Stephanie J. Blalock, the person that played Elphaba in the first national tour. Her first name is Stephanie, and her last name involves starts with a B. She most of the actresses that do that, they play it off as I'm going to tell jokes before they attack me. And the way that Cynthia does it, and she delivers it entirely deadpan, like she's informing them, like they actually thought this was true. No, I'm not sick to my stomach. She just this deadpan delivery, as if she thought that they actually thought that the reason that her skin was green was because she's just extremely nauseous. That's not why she's saying it. That would be Elphaba is an incredibly intelligent character in general, and that's how she's written in the show. Is she's just extremely intelligent, and so the idea that they actually think that I'm sick to my stomach isn't true. She's making a joke, and the idea of no, I didn't eat a lot of grass when I was a kid. Again, it's another joke that she's trying to get ahead of the kind of jabs that they were going to be saying about her to make fun of her. Oh, I've heard this joke before. It's the Cyrano de Bergerac the thing where he comes out. He's like, oh, let's try it this way. Yes, I have a big nose. Oh, is that your nose, or did a train land on your face? Things like that. It's the same basic thing. And Cynthia just says it completely deadpan. And that's how she delivers most of her lines. For When I Meet the Wizard, she says, when I meet the wizard, once I prove my worth. Then I meet the wizard, what I've waited for since birth. It's just completely deadpan. I'm going to make sure the music sounds good. And it loses a lot. Like, that line specifically is written, it repeats a word. And the reason it repeats a word is because the character is supposed to be saying these words for the first time ever. That's one of the most difficult things for a lot of new actors to kind of figure out, is when you do a performance multiple times. Every single time you get on stage and deliver a line, you have to deliver it as if it's the first time your character has ever said those words. That they just thought those up, because that's how real life works. And so what I've waited for since birth, she actually is sitting there and going, I've been waiting for this. How long have I? I've been waiting for this since I was born. And that's what that is. And so you already have this indication of maybe you need to sacrifice the vocal quality here to put the emotion into it. And the entire point of The Wizard and I is, again, it's this idea of my life has sucked, but if I get to meet the wizard, my life may not suck. And look at all these amazing things. And she just gets more and more excited through the entire song. She's more and more and more and more excited, and just you can feel the excitement with the lyrics and everything, and the emoting that happens on stage, and she just simply doesn't. Not until the very end. There's that perfect note that's your money note. That's the term in the biz is the money note. That's the note where it's just perfect for your voice, and you get to sustain it for a while, and you just look and sound amazing doing it. So at the very end, it's a held in such high esteem, when people see me they will scream, for half of Oz's favorite team, the Wizard and I. Really big, belty note. It's a great thing. She smiles on the Wizard and I. That's the only smile she has in that entire song, is at the very, very end. And that kind of describes the entirety of her performance in this show. There are tiny parts where she gets to show emotion, and then everywhere else, she's deadpan. Kind of like, she's kind of mad the entire time. Like, she just has this look of, fuck you. No matter what line she's doing, she just looks like this. Every so often, she'll get her eyes real wide and look terrified, and then she'll go back to resting bitch face. And that's the majority of the show. That's what it is. Again, musically, she sounds amazing. But the choices that she makes to emote don't match with the lyrics. And they don't match with the dialogue. She has such this flat delivery. And this is not the first time I've seen this just incredibly flat delivery. I've seen quite a few different movies recently where, and I've seen it in video games as well, where you get these line deliveries. Like The Veilguard is another really good example of this. The line deliveries are just really, really flat. You can understand everything that's happening, but there's very little variation in pitch. There's very little variation in emotion and in emoting in the line. And it just comes off as very flat. And that's kind of what happens with her acting choices. Now, I call these acting choices. I don't think they were Cynthia's choice, because Ariana Grande has a similar issue where most of the show, she has this kind of wide-eyed, surprised look the entire show. Like, each person has a kind of default expression that they use for 90% of their line delivery. Fiyero has a similar thing where his line delivery is just this kind of suave, hey. But he doesn't smile in it. He just has this kind of like blue steel, like. And the main characters, like, they all have this like default expression that they use for 90% of the stuff. Then every so often, you will see them change their expression. Which is fine for when they change the expression, but it makes it really, really hard to empathize with the actors themselves. The music does a phenomenal job of getting you to empathize and feel emotions because it's brilliantly written. Um, just phenomenally, amazingly written. This is stuff. Steven Schwartz is the genius. Um, but yeah, it just it was that thing. And again, if you're not an actor, you probably wouldn't even have noticed it because again, the spectacle of the movie is so grand and so amazing. If you're not particularly watching for it, you probably wouldn't really recognize it. You probably would feel something seems different about this, but it probably wouldn't register. Oh, she has one expression for 90% of the show. Most people wouldn't think about that because it's not what they're focusing on. They're focusing on literally everything else. But actor brain in me is going, why are we doing that? And why is this becoming a trend? Over and over and over and over and over and over and over again, I'm watching more and more movies where characters get this like default expression that doesn't change except for really, really important parts. And it's upsetting to me because again, I've seen the show live. And it's amazing, and it's such an emotion-filled show, and then there's just nothing. To stop harping on Sister Cynthia for a little bit, Ariana Grande, like I said, had kind of a similar thing. One of my issues with Ariana Grande was not so much the single expression, because I think she had a little bit more variety than Cynthia did. In her expressions. But the thing that kind of annoyed me about Ariana Grande was it was very obvious that she was attempting to mimic Kristen Chenoweth's portrayal of Galinda. If anyone doesn't know, Kristen Chenoweth originated the role on Broadway, and she is brilliant. One of the finest stage and screen actors of a generation. She's a true lyric soprano. She has these amazing, crystal clear high notes. Ariana Grande, again, range wise, she's considered a light lyric soprano because she's not quite as high as Kristen Chenoweth. But when you look at her performances and the things like that, most of the singing that she does tends to be a lot of belting, and she will do kind of accents and fills and things like that, and runs in that, getting into her falsetto. And even I've read, I don't think I've heard it personally because I don't listen to a lot of Ariana Grande, but I've read that she also does, she's also able to use what's called whistle register, which if falsetto is that kind of like floaty, girly sounding thing, whistle register is literally that. It sounds like a whistle. It's so incredibly high. It takes an immense amount of skill to be able to, first of all, just get a whistle register out, and then to be able to do it like on pitch and to be able to sing in a whistle register is unbelievably difficult. It is phenomenally hard. So it's not that Ariana Grande can't hit the high notes. She was hitting them day and night. However, it was so jarring for me to hear her doing these lyric soprano runs that I've never heard her do before, and they just didn't feel natural for her voice. Another thing that I noticed, and again, if you watch the movie, it's most noticeable in the opening scene when she comes in and she's doing all those like lyric runs and this high falsetto, really beautiful stuff. She has such an immense amount of tension in her jaw when she's singing, which is really, really common for singers that are trying to kind of stretch and pushing themselves to a range that they're not used to singing. And something that I noticed by the end of the movie, when she's singing, she tends to lead with her jaw. She will shoot her jaw out, which is, again, an extremely common thing for a lot of more inexperienced singers to do when they're trying to hit notes that feel too high. Because what they do is they reach for the note, and they actually raise their head and they raise their jaw to reach for the note. I'm trying to I'm reaching for the note. But what happens when you do that, by jutting your jaw forward, you're actually creating tension and making it more difficult for your larynx, which is right here. Your larynx, for anyone that doesn't know how your vocal cords work, they're literally a pair of flaps. They're not actually cords, they're flaps. And the way that they work is they kind of tense. If you've ever taken like a blade of grass, like put it between your thumbs and then gone, and it makes like that sound. It's basically kind of what your vocal cords do. And by adjusting the tension on your vocal cords, that's what the rest of the muscles around your larynx do, is they actually stretch and loosen your vocal cords. And depending on how tight or loose they are, when they vibrate against each other, they make a tone. And so in order for them to work, you have to have these muscles be able to contract and retract in very specific patterns if you want to hit precise notes and things like that. And when you jut your jaw forward and you tense all the muscles here, it removes the ability for your vocal cords to stretch because they're already stretched. By moving your jaw like this, it changes and puts a strain on your vocal cords, and it makes it significantly more difficult for you to control them because you're already tensing the cords without using them to change the pitch. So again, like I said, go back, watch just the opening scene with Ariana Grande, and watch she leads with her chin, and watch how her jaw almost doesn't move when she's singing because it is so incredibly tense. Now, normally, it wouldn't mean a damn thing in a movie musical. And the reason why is the vast majority of movie musicals, going back decades, like all the way back to like the 30s and 40s, when they record the scene where they're singing, what they've done is months before, they put the cast into a recording booth and they have them record the entire soundtrack. And then, when they're filming it, they play the recording for them and they basically lip sync to it. Now, they're lip syncing to themselves. But until relatively recently, it was basically required because you wouldn't be able to get good quality sound using boom mics and stuff like that for singing, because there'd always be something going on. There'd be, especially with dancing and stuff like that, you would hear shoes hitting the ground and all that stuff, and it would muddy the recording, and you wouldn't be able to get the really nice, clear sound that you need. That's how it's been done, like I said, for decades, nearly a century. That's how it's been done. However, back when Les Mis with Hugh Jackman came out, a director had this brilliant idea. It's like, no, I want them to sing live like they do on stage. And so the way that he did it was he'd do these crazy close-ups, and then he'd have a boom mic literally, just like I have my mic here, where it's literally right outside of frame. So you can't see it, but it's close enough to pick me up. That's what they did in that movie. And so you got actual live recordings of them doing it while they were acting. And it made for a weird film, to be blunt. It was weird. But it did make it much closer to the stage version because they could make acting choices in the moment. And that's one of the things that makes live theater such an entertaining thing to watch is the actors are living in the moment. They're not trying to emote the same way that they did 3 months ago when they recorded it. So move forward to Wicked. Les Mis is over a decade ago. By the time we get to Wicked, recording technology has gotten a lot better. And you've got Ariana Grande, who started on Broadway. For anyone who doesn't know, she actually did work on Broadway in a show that I can't remember what it was called. But her and Liz Gillies were both in this show. I think it was called 13 or something similar to that. They were both in this show, and that's actually where Dan Schneider saw them and cast them both in Victorious. And then from Victorious, Ariana Grande's character Sam eventually went on Sam and Cat, and by the time Sam and Cat was a thing, she was already becoming the music superstar that she is today. So Ariana Grande not only has a background in performing live, she's a professional singer who tours. So she, she plays to, stadiums and things like that. She knows how to project. And Cynthia, also not just a Broadway actress, an award-winning Broadway actress. Both of these girls have pipes that you wouldn't believe. And so, one of the other things that a lot of people don't realize, if you come from a theater background, it's one of my favorite little bits of trivia about Music Man with Robert Preston. Robert Preston originated the role of Harold Hill on Broadway. And then they decided I think it was in the 50s, they wanted to do a movie version of the show, and they got Robert Preston to reprise his role. Because Robert Preston had done the show on Broadway, and the thing about doing live theater is, and this is advice that I've gotten almost every single show I've ever done. On the second night of production, on the second night of having an actual audience there, the director would come back and go, guys, last night was so amazing. You should be incredibly proud of yourself. However, the people that came tonight paid the same money to see the same show. It's not fair to them to do a different show. They want the same experience that the people last night got, which was an amazing experience. So you need to go out there and give that same show. We don't want you ad-libbing. We don't want you changing things around. We want everyone that comes to this show paid the same money to see the same show. And it's a disservice to the audience to change things up. And that's a really difficult thing to learn, is how to give the same performance over and over and over again. And the truly great Broadway stars learned how to do that. And Robert Preston, that was the weirdest thing for a lot of the film actors to deal with, because film is such a different thing. You shoot a single scene and you shoot it a bunch of times over and over and over again until they get the one that they want. And so a lot of times, every single time you reshoot the same scene, it's different. You'll make different choices, and that's intentional. Because a lot of times the director doesn't know which performance he's going to choose until he's in the editing room, or he may not even be involved in that. It may just be an editor that gets to choose which performance makes it into the final movie. But with Robert Preston, every single time they go, okay, back to one, and action, exact same line delivery, exact same spot on the ground, exact same everything, because that's how Broadway works. When you do it long enough, you just get to, okay, these are the choices that I've made, and these are the choices that I'm going to be making. And that doesn't mean that every single Broadway show is exactly the same. There's always going to be variations and stuff like that. You might be hit with something on stage, not like physically hit, but you might like have an emotion just hit you differently, and it gives a slightly different performance. But for the most part, that's the most important aspect of that. So getting back to the performances, Ariana Grande and Cynthia why is this so hard to say? Erivo. Cynthia Erivo. Ariana Grande and Cynthia Erivo sang all their parts live. And they were very, very proud of doing that, because, again, that's not how movie musicals work. But they sang all their parts live. And so that's why that leading with the chin and the huge amount of tension in her jaw, that's why it actually matters, because she's actually singing there. Normally, they're not. They might be singing, but they're not actually trying to get a good sound or anything. They're trying to get the emotions right and everything, because the singing was done 3 months ago. So yeah, and again, it's not that she did poorly. She did amazingly. She has such an amazing amount of skill, and it's blatantly obvious when you see like the crystal clear notes that she can hit, and the precision that she hits all the notes, and the runs that she puts in. She's very, very skilled. But this is not how she normally sings. This is not her regular voice type. If she had auditioned, on Broadway for the role, I sincerely doubt she would have gotten the role of Glinda. I think she probably would have gotten the role of Elphaba because it fits her voice type better. But they wanted Cynthia to do Elphaba, and it's not that Ariana Grande can't do Glinda. She did a beautiful job as it, but it's not where her voice is most comfortable. And again, if you don't have a background if you don't have any vocal training at all, or like me, like I've done a little bit of voice coaching, and by a little bit, I've had one student. But she was very, very happy with the one lesson that I gave her. But I spent years in private voice lessons and the things like that. And I dabbled in directing and the things like that. And so my eye instantly goes to things like tension in your jaw, leading with your chin. Those are all things that happen when you're singing something uncomfortable and you're trying to make your voice do something that it normally doesn't do. And they're both bad habits, and they can both lead to damage to your vocal cords. I sincerely doubt Ariana Grande has any damage to her vocal cords. She's phenomenally good. But yeah, those are just the things that I picked up. The only other problem I have with this movie, and again, these are super, super nitpicky things. Again, I love the movie. I'm probably going to watch it again. I rented it because it finally went down. I think it was like $6, and I can afford $6. I can't afford $20. So finally got a chance to rent it. I don't know if I'm going to watch it again before my 48-hour rental is up, but I will probably watch it at least one more time before the sequel comes out, because it's a really, really good movie. But the only other issue that I have, and this is just an issue that I have with a lot of kind of modern virtuoso style vocalists, is they really, really like to show just how amazingly proficient they are in their voice. And the easiest way to do that is by doing these runs. I've been out of the game long enough that I really can't do runs super well anymore. If I was to work at it, I could bring back the control I need. But right now, I think I had an oratorio piece called Honor in Arms that I used to do when I was in high school, and it had this run that was like, it was the big part of the oratorio. If anyone doesn't know, oratorio is a religious themed opera. Operas are secular in nature. Oratorios are sacred, is what it's called. They're sacred in nature, meaning they're based on the Bible. So Honor in Arms is from Samson, which is about the story of Samson from the Old Testament. And the character, I can't even remember the character's name anymore, but they're basically, if you're not familiar with the story of Samson, Samson was the strongest man in the world, and God had blessed him with great strength. And the Philistines hated the guy because he could just wipe out their army. And so they were constantly trying to figure out what gives him his strength. Well, God had told him he will remain strong as long as he never cuts his hair. And so they get this girl to go and kind of sex him up and get really close with him. And when they're real close, she go, "Oh, if you really loved me, you'd tell me where your strength comes from." And he's been told by God, never tell anybody what it is. And so 2 times he gives her the wrong thing. He's like, "Oh, well, I'd lose all my strength if anyone braids my hair." And then for some bizarre reason, he woke up the next morning and his hair was braided. It was so weird and random. I wish we could figure out why that happened. And then a bunch of Philistines come in and he beats the snot out of them and he's perfectly fine. Well, after for so long, eventually, the girl gets it. He goes, fine, you know what? You are so fixated on this. If you cut my hair, I lose my strength. And so he wakes up the next morning and all his hair is gone and he has no strength. And so he gets tied up and sent to this place. And there's this character that's their job is to come in and just kill him in front of everybody. And it's supposed to be this thing. And so the character, Honor in Arms, the song itself is this song about this character going, I can't kill this guy. This is an unbelievably dishonorable thing. He has no strength. He's chained up. I'm a warrior, not an executioner. Why are you making me do this? And so the song, Honor in Arms, scorn such a blow, scorn such a blow. And so he keeps going, I could end thee at a blow, for I could end thee at a blow, for I could end thee at a blow, for victory to conquer thee. And then it gets into one of the runs. So it's, and in thy overthrow. And so that's a run. And when you're really good, because eventually the run goes, and glory in thy overthrow. So I can't do my runs very well anymore. Like, that was not great because I had to, like, stop. The really, really good people, like Ariana Grande and Cynthia and Vero, whatever her name is, Cynthia, they do all these crazy runs and stuff like that. And it's very, very technically demanding. It's very, very difficult. And it starts to take away from the music. Like, one of the times when it set me off because while the runs, yes, are very technically difficult and they sound very, very impressive, because you're hitting, a lot of them are like chromatic runs and things like that, where you're hitting every single note between a bunch of different notes. They don't harmonize very well, and sometimes they will go outside of the key. And because of that, if you put them in too much, you lose some of the harmonizing that is built into the song. And there was one part, I can't even remember which song it was, but it was two people. It was at the end of the song, and they're both supposed to hold two different notes. So they're in this really beautiful harmony. And one of the characters decided to do this little run in the middle of it, and it completely destroyed the harmony, because you can't harmonize with moving notes. I mean, you can, but you have to be moving at the same time. And you had one person hitting a static note, the other person doing this, ah. And again, technically, very, very impressive, but you lose something in basically showing off just how amazing you are. There's something to be said about simplicity in music. You know, you can't always be, oh, look how amazing and wonderful. Sometimes it's just as impressive to hit amazing, beautiful harmonies and be able to resonate perfectly with another singer. Like, that's really impressive too. That takes a lot of skill as well, but it's not as flashy. And so, yeah, there was quite a few different times where I know this soundtrack perfectly. I've listened to it a billion times, and there were certain parts where they just added additional runs to kind of prove, oh, look how amazing I am. And it just really, like the very final scene of the show where Elphaba is, up in the night, she goes, ah, beautiful, amazing note. Again, freak of nature note. Way back when it first came out, nobody could do that except Idina Menzel. It's an amazing note. Cynthia had to go, she had to throw extra stuff in there, and it just feels like It's like, look how amazing I am. See how amazing I am? Ignore the fact that I have this amazing uh, orchestra that has been working really, really hard to hit this amazing final note. And you have the entire ensemble there that are also singing and doing this amazing thing. But I need to show that I'm better than everybody else. And I have to throw this extra run in there because it's really, really hard to do. So, yeah. That's my opinions about this movie. Again, it's a phenomenal movie. It was really, really well done. But damn if there aren't some issues with it that are not going to be fixed in the sequel, because I believe the sequel's already been filmed. And it's obvious that these were not quote-unquote mistakes that just accidentally happened. These were conscious choices by the director and the actors. And because of that, they're not going to change the choices that they thought that were right. So that annoys me. And again, if it wasn't for, again, I spent 20 years, or maybe not, over a decade of my life, probably like 15-ish years, maybe 20. Wow. I'm old. It's weird. 37 this year. And yeah, I started acting when I was 14. So yeah. Actually, I think I started acting when I was 12. I started studying seriously was between like 12 and 14. I've been acting since I was like 7 or 8. Yeah, if I didn't have years of vocal training, if I didn't have years of actual studying into acting, probably wouldn't have noticed it. But because I do, I can't just ignore default expression for 90% of the movie, or these runs that don't really fit in, that are just there to show how amazing as a singer you are. And again, both the lead actresses are phenomenally skilled. They're just amazing singers. It just felt out of place when they would sit there and add all these additional runs that didn't need to be there, and started sacrificing the quality of the music because you can't harmonize with a run. So yeah, overall, amazing movie. I'm glad I finally got a chance to watch it. I'm excited about the sequel. I can't wait to see what they did to do. I'm a little bit upset about Michelle Yeoh is so amazing, but she's not a singer. And I really wish they would have. I really hate this kind of stunt casting that they do in Hollywood, where they will put someone into a musical role that doesn't know how to sing. Like Russell Crowe can't sing. He did a passable job as Javert in Les Mis, but he's not a singer, and he was not good at it. But he was Russell Crowe. He's a phenomenally skilled actor. Michelle Yeoh is phenomenally skilled actor. She's absolutely brilliant. She's not a singer, and they gave her a singing part, and it just upsets me because there's so many actors that are singers that could have done it. Like Imelda Stenton, whatever her name is, Umbridge from Harry Potter. If you weren't aware, not only is she a phenomenally wonderful person, she also is an unbelievable singer, and has done Broadway, has done West End stuff. Like, she is really, really brilliant. She could have played Madame Morrible perfectly, and she can actually sing. And again, it's not that Michelle Yeoh did something wrong. She's a brilliant actor, but she's not a singer, and she didn't do particularly well. Another thing that kind of annoyed me, how they treated Nessa Rose, the actress that played her, is really, really good. Marissa Bode. Something I again, for my disabled fans, if anyone doesn't know, I'm 100% permanently and totally disabled, with both mental and physical disabilities. I'm a huge proponent of disabled rights and things like that. So normally, the actress that plays Nessa Rose, go away, phone. Normally, the actress that plays Nessa Rose in the movie is played by a non-disabled actor. because spoiler alert, there's a part in the show where Elphaba takes away her paralysis. And it's significantly easier to teach someone who can walk how to use a wheelchair than it is to teach someone who is paralyzed how to walk. Like, it's just, that's how it works. I hate it. Marissa Bode is actually a disabled actress. She's been paralyzed since, according to Google, she's been paralyzed since age 11. So that I thought was really cool. You had someone that actually knew how to use a wheelchair. However, there's a dance scene, and you can dance in a wheelchair, but the choreographer had no idea how to do it. And so what they ended up doing is basically having her sit there and move her arms a lot, and then have Bach dance around her, as opposed to trying to choreograph something with the wheelchair. Another thing that kind of annoyed me in the musical version, the reason that Elphaba is at the school is she's effectively there to be Nessa Rose's caregiver. And so she basically pushes Nessa Rose around. And they change that dynamic to the idea of Nessa Rose is this independent disabled woman, and no one needs to push her around and all this stuff. So she just needs to be they need to let her be able to live on her own and everything like that, which is fine. Again, the infantilizing of disabled people in general is a real thing. And it's something I've had to deal with. And I've only been disabled for, I don't know, a decade-ish. Somewhere around there, maybe a little more. I can't remember because time is hard. It's a part of my disability. And even I've had to deal with kind of being infantilized because of my disability. It's really, really common for people to go, oh, well, we have to treat them with extra, we have to do everything for them. No, disabled people can live their own lives and can do their own things. And understanding what they can and can't do, that's perfectly fine. But it felt a little bit heavy-handed. And then when we get to the dance scene, she doesn't dance. In the original musical, there's this part where Bach goes, Nessa, I've got something to confess, a reason why I asked tonight. I only wish you knew. And she goes, because I'm in this chair and you found sorry for me. Isn't that right? And Bach goes, no. It's because you are so beautiful. And it ends off with, let's dance. And so in the stage show, what happens is Bach gets behind her and he pushes her chair and he dances with the wheelchair. And he goes around and he pushes her around, and it's great. It is a bit infantilizing, but it looks good on stage. This one, he's not allowed, no one is allowed to push Nessa Rose unless they're doing something wrong. Like Madame, or the head of Shiz tries to push her and she's the bad person, and it causes Elphaba to flip out. Otherwise, Nessa Rose has to push herself the entirety of the time, and there's no one's allowed to do anything. And so instead of choreographing something where you actually get to see her dance, because you can't, wheelchair users, there's like wheelchair basketball and all this like amazing stuff. Like, being in a wheelchair does not mean all you can do is go ka-dunk, ka-dunk, ka-dunk. Someone that's really good in a wheelchair can do amazing things. And so it's 100% possible to dance in a wheelchair. It is, you wouldn't be able to tell from the movie because all they do is move her arms around a lot and then Bach twirls around her. But they could have choreographed an actual dance scene with Nessa Rose actually using her wheelchair to dance. It's a thing that happens. And it looks amazing. I've seen wheelchair breakdancing. I've seen a lot of really amazing, cool stuff with wheelchairs. And the choreographer, I think, just didn't think that a wheelchair user could dance. And so instead, they just had Bach dance around her. And I hate stuff like that because it's great that we have an actual disabled actress playing a disabled character. It does mean that plot point in the show is going to get a lot more confusing because, like I said, it's remarkably simple to teach an able-bodied actor how to use a wheelchair. Significantly more difficult to teach someone who is paralyzed to be able to use their legs that don't work. So I'm interested to see what they do with that plot point. If they just, it might be that they just take it out completely. Because again, the whole idea of, well, your disability is, I'm going to cure your disability. And there are large portions of the disabled community that really hate the language of cure. Like there are huge portions of the deaf community that are very against cochlear implants and things like that because they don't consider themselves disabled, quote unquote, as in they don't consider themselves like lesser because they can't hear. The deaf community is robust, and so there are a lot of people that don't like aids and things like that because it takes away from part of their group identity. So I could kind of see them just like writing that aspect off in the show because they don't want to kind of perpetuate that idea of all disabled people wish that they weren't disabled. Which in my particular case, I would love to not be disabled. But my disabilities don't, make me a member of this really cool club. My disabilities try to kill me on a daily basis. So yeah, I'd be fine with them going away. But there are a lot of communities where they take pride in that aspect of their life. So I'm interested to see what happens. I'm like I said, you can't make someone that can't walk because their legs physically don't work. You can't make them magically walk. I mean, you theoretically could with camera tricks and things like that, but I think that would go over super, super poorly. So I sincerely doubt they're going to do that. But who knows? Anyway, yeah. That's my thought on it. Like I said, I really enjoyed it. There were just some nitpicky things that made it hard for me to suspend my disbelief. Let's put it that way. Didn't ruin the movie for me. Thought it was really, really great. I hated the fact that it ended because I want to see the second half. But after reading a bunch of interviews and stuff about why they did it, at first I thought they were just doing it as a money grab. And then I read this interview where the director was talking about it just didn't feel right. Because in the stage show, after Defying Gravity, there's an act break. There's an intermission, so the audience actually gets up, leaves the theater, goes out, then they come back and they start Act 2. That's how it works in the stage show, and it just didn't feel right to go from Defying Gravity, which is this huge, very triumphant finale-style number, and then immediately go into Act 2, which starts at a much lower point. And after seeing the movie, I totally understand. Like, this is not a money grab or anything like it. He made the right choice there. So it annoys me that I can't watch the second half yet, but I totally get it. Like, it was the right choice to make. Anyway, interested to hear from you guys. Did you guys watch the movie? Did you like it? Did you not like it? Are you going to go back and watch it and see if you can notice just how incredibly tense Ariana Grande's jaw is every time she's doing those super high lyric soprano stuff? Let me know in the comments down below. Otherwise, again, it's all for me today. I will see you guys next time. All right? Bye-bye.